La 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 la, wait till I get my money right.
What's going on, X? Welcome to Quantum Ascend. I have CHEX Chintai up on the screen here, the 1 week price chart. I don't own any of this. This was a request from one of my Quantum Circle members. So going to get that out today for everyone here on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. This coin has not been around for a very long time. Looks like May of last year, so just over a year. Market cap right there at 160 million. So not a huge coin. But we can see that last year, I mean, it went on a pretty decent little run up here from that low. What did we get? We got about an 11x there on CHEX, so not too bad. And that was outside of an alt-season environment. When did the Trump pump happen? Right in here. So during the Trump pump, it got closer to a 3.5x. So, we got to take these targets with a grain of salt because it is a newer asset. When it is lower liquidity, only 150 mil, it could get juicing. But we are going to take what the charts give us. We're not going to get too caught up in those wild targets right now. First thing I'm going to do is from that inception point to this low, draw out a fib to see if we had any reactions. Got pretty close up to the 2618 here, but we haven't closed out that range yet, up at $140. So that is going to be an area of interest moving forward. Now, on this, what it's looking like for CHEX is on the macro, probably looking at an A, B, C to get us off into new highs. Now, the minimum measured move on this for an A, B, C, the C wave has to be the length of the A wave. So that's 1091 from the low there. Where's 1091 from the low here? 1091 gets us just out past that 2618 there at 90 cents. So that is not my primary target on this, but what I will say is that's the minimum. So we should see this thing at least get up right around $1. And God, that's such a nice round number. It's a nice round number, and it's about a 6x from here. So definitely an area of interest, especially with the 2618 right there. So that's from a minimum standpoint. The other thing I want to do here is I want to draw fibs on this A to B drop right now and see if we have any confluence with these targets, and also just kind of take a look at what's going on, because this is a potential target up here as well at $3.26. Now, what I'll say is from the current price level, what does that give us? Yeah, it's about a 21x. There are some other alts that have that potential that would put it probably around, I want to say like a $3 billion market cap off the top of my head. So that's definitely a possibility. Now, I do see some confluence higher up though. The 1618 of this range is also right up there around the extensions of that first drop. All right, so there is going to be some kind of resistance up in this area. It's just, until this thing really gets rolling, we're not going to be able to tell if it's if that's going to be where we top out, or if that's where, this next wave ends up coming to before we settle down and then go off into one more high. So there's a few different ways to play this right now with CHEX. And again, it is tough. It hasn't been around for very long. But we're going to go ahead and take a stab at it anyway. That level up there, what were we saying, is like up here at the 4236 at 141 of this range. Pretty in line with a lot of the stuff we're looking at. Like an 8.8x gets us out near 150. So, or $1.50, excuse me. So to be honest, that's going to be my primary. We just have too much up here. The 3618 of the near range, of the wider range, the 1618 of this near range. There's just there's a lot going on here. Let me pull this over a little bit so we can see it better. A lot going on up in this area, and again, with an ABC, that measured move gets us up into that level as well. So that's going to be the primary for the sake of the video. These are still targets up here. All right, and again, lower cap coin, only been around a year, not a ton of data. So we're still going to use TA to the best of our abilities, but keep it, we're going to keep in mind these targets. So if this thing really gets running up here in our third wave, and this is going to move a little different, but if our next wave ends up getting us up here, and then settles back down, well, I'm going to be looking at that 4236. But right now, for the time being, that is not the case. We're going to be looking at, our first move up into here. And instead of a 3-wave move, because this just set a new low in August, right? So we're talking about waves 3, 4, and 5 for the altcoins. CHEX is going to be a little different. We're looking at an A, a B, and a C to get us up into in 3 waves. All right. There's just not time for this thing to go into 5 waves while everything else doesn't. And because it's set new lows, we're going to move up in more of an ABC fashion. And last week it went up 50%. So finally got us up off that floor. Now, where could we be looking to go? Let me see. Let's make this a little bit cleaner. We have that original high right up there at like 38 cents. What is that? Like almost a 2x from where we're at. Typically though, let's see. I'm looking at that 1618. I'm looking at this 1618. I like that as an area of interest here on this A wave before we come settle back down. So we've been talking about, in general, the 3rd to 4th wave, or in this scenario, A to B wave. We're looking at like a 50 to 35% drop. And I'm looking at these highs here, and we can tell that there's a bunch of resistance right here. This would be a great level for us to come back test. We got stopped out there on a week, stopped out there on the week, stopped out, close, stopped out, rollover. We're going to find something here, whether it be resistance or support. So I'd like to see this thing pop back above that high and come back down to test this area. How deep of a drop would that be? 50%. So like we were saying, 35 to 50%. This gets us right there in that level before we would go off into one more new high. So what we know is in an ABC, this is something else we have to pay attention to. And again, it's a little hard. We're trying to plan these things out months ahead of time, but we need the C wave to at least be the length of the A wave. So in this situation, the A wave would be 600%. B wave dropped us down here. Are we there? No, not quite there. So now we have to go back to the drawing board a little bit. One of two things happens. This either extends further, but right now that's not our base case. Or this A wave, we got a little ambitious. Maybe this thing only makes it down to that high, right? And then we come back down to back test and we see that there's a ton of support right here in this area, around 20 cents. Nice round number. How would that go for our measurements? Well, now the A wave would be 390%, almost a 5x. And then our C wave would be 625%, right? So the C wave longer than the A wave. Again, we're just speculating right now, but this is how these things typically move. This thing could easily break above that, right? And again, that could be extended. But for the time being, I have to pay attention to past price action. I have to look at major fibs. And I have to stick within the parameters of Elliott wave theory, which says the C wave must be at least the length of the A wave. I can draw this guy back in, and let's see. We have some confluence. So that 1 is also the 382 here, right around 37, 38 cents. Okay? So that was an area of interest that we had, and it makes sense. We see some confluence of some resistance there. Drop back down into this level, which again, if we extend this, you see the 382. And then we go off into our last high. So for now, this is going to be my base case, guys. We're going to get that run up to 37 cents. We're going to have a drop down into this like 20-cent level, and then one more time up to $1.42. Again, this thing gets going. It gets hotter. We will come back to the drawing board. You guys cannot, we're doing this so far ahead of time, right? You can't just be sticking to those targets. Like, that's why we do Elliott waves. We have to look at the macro too, right? The macro is super important, and that's what we're doing over on the Quantum Circle. 2 daily videos, entries, exits, and strategy in a Discord. Like, guys, I'm telling you, you're making your money back just on entries and exits, because we know when these things are dropping. We know when these things are bottoming out. We talk about dollar cost averaging. And when the whole macro, like regardless of where your alts are, when the macro says it's time, and we're going to be selling. So for now, this is our game plan. But like I said, we will readjust as we need to. Just mention the Quantum Circle, guys. Totally worth it. Great community over there, having a lot of fun. If not, if you could follow, like, repost, I'm just so appreciative you guys are here. I'm trying to reach as many people as I can before this train leaves the station. So I appreciate your help in doing that. Hope you guys are having a great Tuesday. I got more coming out today. I'll talk to you then.